A lot of times on a stereo mix, depending on the content, um, there's some other compressors that I'll use for their glue in a mix, but there's an interesting kind of glue that I can achieve on the nail that's really different than any of the other options I've had. And that's using this direct comp. You know, you might see some other compressors or effects units just calling that a wet-dry control. But it's pretty interesting to be able to go in and set the nail up to do really extreme amounts of compression. Again, this is the cool thing about it, being able to do so much gain reduction cleanly. That I'll actually set it to do some very extreme amount, you know, squashing things down, you know, 20 dB, really, you know, roping in transients, but then just blending maybe 20% of that in. So it's a really cool way to do parallel processing within one box and get the effects, whether you're doing that on a stereo mix or for in-the-box mixers who might want to send their entire drum bus out to some analog processing. It's a way to do parallel processing that gives you a lot of creative control, and for you in-the-box people, that is 100% phase coherent, which is something you can't always be guaranteed working inside a computer. So yeah. So I've gone in and just done an extreme ridiculous amount of gain reduction here with a super fast release. So if you hear it in and out, we've completely eliminated any of those transients. But now we can start going back to completely dry here and just starting to blend in. Just with that control, we can go from just a little bit of that compression gush all the way to completely flattened. And when you're really dialing it in, just finding that perfect balance, you find there's a real sweet spot many times in getting that perfect balance. You of course could do this with a much more modest compression setting, but the fun I've been having actually is going for a really extreme amount or style of compression and just bringing in a little bit of it. But obviously you can do the same thing if you wanted a little less radical effect. The more time I've spent with the nail, the more I've found it coming over into tracking duties. When I first started using it, not being too familiar, I use it a lot on the 2-bus, but also for mixing. But the more I've gotten comfortable with how it responds to different transients and content, I've started to use it more and more as a tracking tool. What I love about using it as a tracking device is that situation where I want to do interesting manipulation to the sound, like compressing an acoustic guitar to be a little more chimey, or just keep a bass a little bit more solid without overpowering the sonic characteristics of the instrument and the other things I have in my chain. Just all this last week I was tracking a record on a beautiful vintage Neve full of 1073 mic pre's and EQs, which brought all the color we were going for on that record. So when I was bringing my compression in, it wasn't a matter of I needed to add character. We got the character we wanted just by using that particular console for that sound. So I was able to use the nail in just to start doing transient shaping, envelope sculpting, to really be a creative tool and change how the guitars felt, how the bass sat within a mix. But we found ourselves using it on a whole range of instruments. We used it on trumpets, we used it on lead vocals, we used it on acoustic guitars, and we used it on room mics. And that was actually something pretty kind of cool and exciting to me. I'm a big fan of, you know, the ever popular distressor, smash the heck out of the room mics and blend that in. I'm a huge fan of it, but it's not always appropriate 100% of the time. Sometimes I want that really squashed room without bringing the coloration of that particular compressor in. And what was really cool about using the nail in that application was I was able to squash the room to bring up the sustain of the drums and the decay of the cymbals without really bringing too much of the coloration of the unit. into it. And for this kind of mellower record, that was actually a perfect solution. Even against some other tools that I might traditionally love for the job, what I really love about the nail is it doesn't replace the things I already love, but really opens up my creative palette. It really brings something new to the table in a way that I haven't experienced with all the equipment I have in my own studio and all the different studios I work at around the world.